started for the day. Hello everyone, my name is Linda Reed-Enever. Welcome back to another business skills webinar. These webinars are all about teaching you how to do things within your business. And this week's skills webinar is with myself. We're going to talk about how you can work with the media in 2020 and see your business being seen with the media and press. So this skills webinar is one where I'm going to be talking to you. There's no slides, there's no presentations. Today I want to talk to you and share with you some tips from my little red book or my little red folder of PR tips to help you work with the media within 2020. So I'm grabbing out my notes and ready for us to have a conversation about working with the media in 2020. If you've got any questions along the way, please ask. If you are touching base, if you have not seen the skills webinar before, these are all about helping you learn, and I will try and answer as many questions as I can throughout the journey. For those of you who are thinking, who is this lady? Why is she talking to us? My name is my name's Linda. I am the founder of the BBB Group. I'm also a publicist and marketing consultant by trade. And that is what I do. I love teaching business owners how to market their business. I love teaching you how to do your own PR and share your knowledge out there. So that's the bit of a straight credit about why I can talk about what I'm doing. I've been doing this for about 20 years. It's a bit of a full-on career that I've had. And I really do. I love what I do. It was a career that found me, and that was great. So with the new year ahead, lots of business owners are sitting here looking at, or maybe have worked with the media this year, or looking at the opportunities to work with the media. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how you can tap into the power of the media for your business. So what I want to do is give you that head start, because the media is all about thinking ahead. It's all about having your plans in place, and it's all about making sure that you've got the right journey heading towards you over the next little while. I haven't checked audio volumes on this. Bear with me just a second. I should do that. Bear with me, I'm just going to check audio to make sure that you can hear me. Yes, yep, you can all hear me, so that's great. I didn't even check that. Joys of being running a webinar by yourself. So there's a story behind every business. When you start within business, there's the why you started in business. There is how your product comes together. There's what your product solves. There is a number of stories that will help you within your business life that you maybe don't even know of. But it's often those why stories, the behind the stories that the media is looking for. It's not your product, it's not your sales pitch, and it's not, here's my amazing new thing. It's what the product or the service actually solves for the business, for the consumer or for the buyer, or your story about why you got into business or why you started your not-for-profit that the media are going to look for. So first of all, before we get started, let's tap into what is the media to begin with. So the media the traditional media is your print, your TV, your radio, the media that we've been consuming since we were children, and we've watched as our parents started to see some of these media outlets out there. But the media has also changed. So we don't just have our newspapers, our TVs, our magazines anymore. We have streaming services, we have digital media, we have Facebook and social media platforms just like this, where you can consume media and learn stuff as you are here in this skills webinar. And that has made the media more accessible and even more within reach of business owners. So there is more places looking for content, which means, there are more people looking for stories and unique angles, which makes it a great opportunity for you to share your story with the media in now or in 2020, but it's about thinking ahead and making sure that we get our story together in the right way. So the media is, in the end, no matter whatever channel you look at, is all about sharing your story. It's all about educating, and it's all about engaging the media in a what's in it for them or what's in it for the reader point of view. So when we work with the media, our number one thing that needs to be top of mind for our 2020 plans is, what does this story have? Or how will it relate to the publication's readers? What angle do I have? What value do I have to add to that publication and to that outlet? So that's tip number one. That's about media. So what is PR? PR is what I do for a living, but PR is all about sharing your story, whether that's through the media, whether it's through your website, whether it's through social media. It's about your brand and your brand message. And PR stands for public relations, or as I like to call it, people relations. And when you start working with the media, you are definitely upping that public relations component, because you are starting to talk to journalists about working with their readers and their networks, and that's a person. You're talking to editors, you're talking to the audience itself, and then there's of course you in there. So your PR is your public relations, and you do PR on a daily basis without knowing it. You're interactions with customers, your interaction with people is all about your public relations component. Now, the PR from the media point of view, so making public relations and relationships with journalists and publications and outlets out there, that takes time. That is a relationship that really does take time. You need to establish yourself as a credible source. You need to keep working it. You need to keep massaging that relationship and making sure that the journalist knows you, or the publication continues to know you and who you're about. So as well as marketing and advertising, we've got our social media, which is part of our PR, or you've got the opportunity, you know, to have a look at podcasts as part of your PR now, which lots of business owners are out there doing. So public relations and branding, it's all a continual process. As I said, it's something that takes time. We can't give up on it. We need to consistently make it part of our marketing activity. And that's why I'm talking to you now in particular about making marketing part of your 2020, is so that you make sure that you've got it as part of your plan, whether you're putting it into something like the Business Life Planner, or whatever you're looking at doing, you're making sure that you've got your planning out there. There are 3 frontiers to PR, as I like to call it. Public relations gets broken down into 3 particular categories. Proactive PR, and that's about getting your message out there, announcing new products and new initiatives, award-winning processes, and we saw this in BBB yesterday. There's a member who needed a press release written for an award. And it's usually defined that something happens within your business that you want to share with your share with the world. So what I want you to do, just for a second, we're just going to pause this down. Have you won any awards? Are you nominated for any awards? Write those down. Have you got any new products coming up? Have you got any new services coming up? Write those down. Have you got a new initiative? Are you sponsoring a new program in 2020? If you're doing that, write those down. So if you haven't got a pen and paper, quickly go and grab one and just start writing those things down, because they're about your proactive PR. That's about, we've done good and we'd like to tell you about it. So that could be a new invention, it could be a new product, it could be a new initiative, you could have won an award, you might have even brought in a high profile staff member that's an industry win, and you might want to announce that as well. These are the things that you'd like about your business that you would like to share with the world, and that can even be your story about launching a book, it can be your story and what problem the book solves, or it can be a new course or a new service offering that particularly focuses on a target market and a niche component of the market, and what problems does it solve, and why did you feel so empowered to put that product out there. Okay, the other one that we talk about is reactive PR. Reactive PR happens when you're in a response to something, and it could be an announcement by another party. It could be a discussion you can contribute. So it could be news that happens within the media. When I talk about news makes some news, it could be a response to a story that's already trending. It could be a response to the news that's already out there this morning. You know, we've got Scott Morrison talking about not sending military into drafts. We've got some feedback coming in from farmers and drought situations, for drought, sorry, bear with me. We've got feedback coming in from farmers from Q&A last night about droughts. We've got a protest on coal happening this morning. All of these are really going to be trending topics, and if you can tap into that news and offer an angle or an idea or something like that, that's going to help you work with the media in 2020. So one of the things that another thing to look at for 2020, apart from writing down what's coming up, is watch the news with I can add something to that. And if you can, respond quickly. And that's what we call reverse pitching. It's finding the journalist's contact details and pitching to them. While reactive PR is reactive, you can't really plan for it. It's about making sure that we have our time to watch our news and make sure that you've got the opportunity to sit there and look at what can I react to. A really good tip for using reactive PR is also setting up a Google alert with keywords and key alerts within your business, so that you can react to those particular stories. And, you know, submit a story to somewhere like Media Connections, or submit a story somewhere to publications, so that you can get everything out there. And so, and the other things when we talk about reactive PR is when things happen within your industry, like federal budgets and those sorts of things. So they're all of the reactive things. So once you get off this webinar, or pause me, or have a chat now, the biggest thing I want you to do now is to go and have a look at those key dates within 2020. And if you need help finding more key dates, we have a whole heap of them in the Media Connections website for our members. I have a dedicated key date section. But if not, have a look at your the key dates, the things that are going to affect you. You know, get the calendars out, get all those things out, and look at those key dates throughout the year where you're going to need to react, and allow some time to have some reactive PR throughout the process. And ongoing PR is the third particular one. Often underutilized, ongoing PR is where you share evergreen knowledge with the media. So it's your knowledge, your top 10 tips, your top 5 tips, your top 6 tips, evergreen content that they can use at length later. So it might be used for, and with coming up to Christmas, it might be how to leave your business at Christmas time, how to manage stress at Christmas time, how to work with family and friends. But it's a trading your knowledge and your expertise for what's an evergreen content. We've got schoolies happening at the moment. We've got you know, New Year's, business, Christmas parties, all of those sorts of things that really tap into, and they're good evergreen sharing your knowledge component of the media. So have a look at where you can use ongoing PR, and that might be that you just share some tips and statistics about what affects your industry throughout the year. But that's another good press release angle to keep in your toolkit for 2020. Okay, so when we start to share our stories with the journalist, out there, we've looked at the PR styles that we can use. When we start to share our story, we need to think like a journalist, okay? We need to think about what's going through their head when they're putting a story together, because we love our product, we love our service, and yes, we think it is newsworthy. But what it means is when we think it's newsworthy, or when we think the story we're about to share is newsworthy, we quite often miss pieces throughout the processes. So when a journalist is looking for a story, they're looking for, is it new? So is it something that they haven't run for a while, or is it new to the topic, or is it a new angle or a new outlook on take on something? Is it timely? Is it timed right? And we'll go in a little bit further into timing with PR and the media in this webinar shortly, but is it timed right? Have you got the timing right to work with the journalist out there? Because if you don't have your timing right, that's going to make it really hard for you to be able to catch these guys and get your story run. So making sure that your timing is right. And does it appeal to my audience? There is no point in pitching a story on financial planning for business to a mum's publication, to a parenting publication, if the story doesn't match. But in saying, if you're pitching that same financial story to a financial publication, it's about making sure that your press release is matched. So make sure that when you are putting your press release and your press strategy and your press content out there, that you are looking at, am I putting this through to the right categories? If you're using a submission site like Media Connections, don't just select all the categories, or am I actually targeting the right journalist? Because you don't want to damage your relationship with a journalist by sending them a story that's not relevant. So look at making sure, does it appeal to their audiences? Sometimes a journalist is looking for not so much as a story, or they're looking for a little bit more. Sometimes they can be looking for great pictures. So you might be doing that reactive PR where we talk about reacting to situations. That includes responding to call outs on things like Source Bottle and Media Connections as well. You might look at reactive PR. They might need great pictures. They might also need striking vision. It depends on what you've got going on. And if you can, especially when it comes to showing off your product or what you do, you can put vision or video or imagery and some really cool stuff in there, or even some quotes if it's a book launch and a reading from the book. It's really going to up your media intake. So they're looking for the authoritative source in your content. So when you are there, make sure that you put your boilerplates and those things in to make sure that you've got your bio and everything backed up. So each day, as I said, media seek heaps of things. So new stuff that they're looking for. So let's go into the new a little bit more. New developments, new innovations, new programs that solve real problems for the industry. That's what they're looking for. They might look at, depending on the day of the week, some of the stories that news outlets some of the stories that news outlets may look for, and depending on days of the week, it will depend on whether that story works for the demographic. So make sure that we're looking at their demographic, and if we know that in particular, if you're going to pitch a story to the journalist, make sure that you're looking for the right component of time to get out there. If a new development applies to a wide section of their audience, that's going to help you. So if you've got a new development or a new product, service, or offering that's going to appeal to more of their audience, then that's going to help you with your process. New treatments come out, new drugs, new technology, all of that new angles tends to affect people and their interest. So, it's piquing people's interest. So anyone loves a new story, but lots of people love to be the first with something, and that's no different than the media. They do love to be the first. Timely is another one. As there's major issues that crop up, there's dates and stuff that will happen throughout our news scene. But for example, Schoolies Week come November, news outlets are actively seeking stories relating to tips on sending your team away to schoolies, and tips on how to stay safe, and tips on how to ensure that your team is safe over that period. Government announcements also might affect your organisation. So timely news, has there been a new policy announcement? Has there been a new a new budget release? Has there been, you know, and we're just even tapping into the announcement about not sending the Defence Forces out to the drought affected areas at this stage is Scott Morrison's thing. You know, they're all timely stories. It's active, it's now, it's hot right now, and you tap into it. Human interest angles are another one that the media always look for. So we're talking about the drought again. It's affecting people, you know, it affects us in the city, it affects the country people, it affects all sorts of people. The drought is a massive thing. There's always a section to relate the news related to that human interest story, that feel-good story, that person who did really well, or that tearjerker story. And I know, you know, there's a tearjerker story as well. So when you look at it, look at your human interest angles, look at the things about what does your business do really, really well. Do you actually support people? Do you make an impact in your community by hiring a particular demographic? A local business here last night did really, really well, and it was a social media campaign, but it's still PR and it's still working with the media on, they'd hired a particular demographic of people, and the story was run, and it was a really great mini documentary, and it worked incredibly well, and it was being shared via social media. So that human interest angle of we did well with something works incredibly well when you're sharing your story. They're looking for a clear press release, and I cannot stress this enough. When you're putting your story together, the press release is what I like to call the recipe, the format that you are looking for, and you can, you know, have a look at the release templates that we have on Media Connections, or you can also go and grab yourself the full media release ebook, or if you become a member, you get the How to Write a Media Release e-course, which will help you with that one. So looking for a clear release. The chances are the editor will make a decision on that, on your headline and the first couple of lines of your release. So that needs to be really clear. It needs to explain the who, the what, the where, the when, the why of the story. So you know, you need to really sum up your story. And I'm referring back to book launches, but it's just because that's where my head is at the moment. So author launches book doesn't tell her anything, but author launches book to help business owners work in drought affected areas. Look, we're just going for drought as well, helps someone being able to tap into that power of the media and to tell their story from that way. So that your headline's going to be that first clue. That's got to be the thing that's going to pique their interest. And we've got an example here that I've written down in this one here is new website will save households thousands on bills, or body corporate representative slams government reform. So that's if you're running a new website. So say if you had a new website, not particularly for your business, but it happened to be an energy saving website or something like that, you've got the opportunity there. But you can also see the body corporate representative slams government reforms. So you could be an industry leader talking about government reforms or something that affects your audience or industry bodies or whatever it is from there. Does it fit the audience? We've covered that. The journalist wants to know that it's going to fit their audience. If it doesn't, they won't run it. And what's in it for them? If you're launching a product or an event to the news outlet, who's available to speak for them? They're looking for not only that clear release, but if they're going to turn up and film your launch or whatever it is that you've got invited them on, or your press release, who's their contact? Who do they need to talk to? What sound grabs can they get? Is there going to be a dedicated area to help them? That is all that they're looking for. And the one thing I can guarantee you the media are not looking for is advertising. They are not looking for, here's my sales pitch, this is great, and I'm going to mention your product 20 times throughout the product. That is what advertising is for. And the advertising allows us to be able to run these stories and share our story with the media. So we need to let advertising do its job, and we need to make sure that when we're pitching our story to the media, we are actually pitching them a story, our why, our problem solving journey, or some feedback or some education or tips without the area. Always make it easy for a journalist when you're putting your story out there too. Make sure that your contact details are there, that your mobile phone number is on there, that the email address is there. If there's more than one spokesperson, do so. If you've got extra images that they can look at, put a folder up on either Google Drive or Dropbox and say further images are available here. Making it easy. The more you give them to run your story with further resources in that release, the better chance you have of having that story run. So make sure that you do that. Good part of media presence is all about planning and timing. So when you send your release, or when you look at making PR things, be ready to respond. It also comes down to often knowing how to respond and doing it. And we talk about responding to the media in a couple of ways, and that's what I want to cover with you now. When the media comes a knocking, that'll be either whether it's a result of a media release, or they've picked you from a contact directory, whether they've picked you from a press release directory like Media Connections, or they've picked you up because they found you on Twitter. When the media comes knocking to your business and says, yes, we like your story, or we like what you've sent us, then we need to react fast. We need to make sure that we're available for the interview. We need to respond back to any questions or emails that we get within a timely manner, because the media moves fast. There's deadlines and they're looking to fill that story spot. And if you're not responding, then they are not going to be able to fill the spot with you, or they think that you're not available. And then that's some, worst case scenarios. You don't want to be put in that position where they can't fill that spot with you. Before any interview, get up to speed with what they are looking to discuss with you. So just ask a few questions, yes, great, happy to have a chat with you. Where are you wanting to chat? What are you wanting to talk about? Do you need a couple of key questions from me? Know your subject and run yourself through some key phrases and points from that media release before you get started. That is going to be huge. So make sure that you're running yourself through it. You know what you're going to say so you don't get tongue-tied. It's also worth remembering even the an unwelcome visit from the media. So when the media comes a knocking and it maybe isn't a positive story, gives you still the opportunity to provide to have your say, so to provide your angle and a right of response. So make sure that you've got some things. If you know something's about to pop up and you know something's going to boil in your way in your business that maybe is not going to relate to a positive media story, then make sure that you've actually taken that time to actually prep some positive responses, some your say areas, and make sure that you've got your opportunities there to know what you're going to say so that you don't get flustered on the spot. So when the media comes a calling is another type of time when you're going to respond to the media. And it involves keeping your ears on the ground for issues affecting your industry, which will provide you a really good opportunity to comment. And every business, we really, in 2020, if you want to work with the media, a solid knowledge of the news relating to them, whether it's a government or policy change, upcoming legislation, new initiatives and studies and findings are key events to piggyback on them when the media comes a calling for a source. Now that could be, they do a media call out, they do a call out on Media Connections, or they do a call out in ThoughtSpot, or say we're looking for someone to respond to this topic. You need to respond fast, you need to respond quick, and you need to show that you know your stuff. You need to show that, and based on these statistics or based on that recent report, you know your stuff, so that you can add your credibility and show yourself as a credible source from that particular point in time. Great example is, we talk about a pool franchise in this particular example. Is the introduction of mandatory pool fencing. So they send a release welcoming the new laws, and that would be one strategy you can do. So if you've got a new law, welcome the new laws. They do so, and then they provide advice on how a homeowner or media owner or a publication can meet these requirements. So yes, it's new because it relates to the particular timing we're talking about a new legislation. It's timely and it's interesting because it actually gives the people the how. And that's just an idea about, a pool franchise and how they can tap into this new government legislation. So those Google alerts that I mentioned earlier are really key to 2020. Look out for new legislation, set up alerts that are going to trigger those inboxes so that you can be incredibly responsive. Have an article bank. Working with the media in 2020, especially when you're looking at doing your evergreen media components, an article bank is going to be key. And an article bank is those evergreen tips of knowledge and that you can either submit to publications and be a guest post or a guest author, and that's all part of your PR strategy. Or it can be the ones that you need to focus on. So my top tips for this one, when we talk about it and we work with clients and coaching people, is actually looking at drafting up one for each month. So maybe some evergreen tips for each month. Focus on specific events. I'll go through those key dates and those moments in time that we were talking about earlier, and make sure that you start to go, okay, well, I can respond to this one. I can draft an article, or I can draft a press release around that topic. The key to this is just going through the calendar and prepping out your year and making it a plan, just like any other plan. Planning, okay, well, this month my press release topics are going to be this month my press release topics are going to be that. It's all about being prepared. So if sit in the quiet months, if you're about to hit into your quiet months, or you're in quiet period of time, be prepared. Write a 12-month bank of press releases or media releases, so that you know that you've got it out there, and when things get busy, your PR contact doesn't stop. The one thing I want to talk to you now about being prepared to, guys, is also actually thinking ahead of time. The media isn't working on Christmas. Well, they are working on Christmas stories now, but they're not going to be working on the Christmas stories in the week in the lead up to December 25 year print magazines and all of those sorts of things. So we need to think ahead when we're working with the media. We need to think about that 90 to 120 day mark ahead of time. Then we need to touch base with the outlets that might be working about 60 days ahead, then ones with about 30 days ahead, and then ones about seven or the 10 days ahead within that period of time. And the reason we need to do that is because your story will be, for each of those audiences, their timing is different. So your print magazines are putting out their Christmas stuff now. So trying to get particular Christmas coverage right now is most probably not going to work in print, but it might for online publications, it might for TV, it might for the local newspaper. So you can look at putting out those press releases there. So I normally suggest that if you're looking at something and you want to be focused in a particular time slot of media, is that you have a campaign that does hit about that 90-day mark, a press release or another campaign that hits about that 60-day mark, one for 30 and then one for 10 or 7 days out. And that just allows you the best opportunity to be seen by all outlets for your story over that period of time. The other thing we need to do is we need to work with our journalists to get your story out there. So you might have got your story picked up. They might have sent you some information. If they've said that they're interested in the story, but they don't have time and they're on deadline, offer to draft the piece up for them. If you're good at writing and what you do, if you can draft that story up for them, that gives them a better chance of being able to run that story and fill it and fix that opportunity. So look at, they can then alter and edit and make it suitable to the tone and style of their publication. Similarly, if you're handy with a camera, by all means, photograph your content, photograph the event, send key images. And if you need to, you might even do a video piece. You might even do a video to camera piece of something happening or a demonstration of your product. Respond to those phone calls and emails quickly. The media moves fast. As I said, they're looking to put those stories out quickly as they possibly can. So if you're calling a journalist, check if they're on deadline, because there's nothing worse than trying to keep talking through them if they're on deadline because they're not paying attention to you. And if they are on deadline, ask to call them back. A quick rule of thumbs when we're talking about deadlines is that daily newsrooms are best contacted in the morning because they're starting to work on the next day's publication in that morning. Your weeklies and monthlies have more time through the days just after their publication. So when you're looking at your weeklies and your monthly publications, the day or so afterwards, so if it comes out on a Thursday, then your Fridays and Mondays are most probably your best times. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, if they're trying to get a publication out on Thursday, is not going to be the best time to talk to these outlets. Same thing about, if the magazine comes out on the 15th of the month, then, really that prime time for you is between the 17th and the 20th before they start moving into deadline stories there. Give respect. Every journalist has a job to do. They have an editor, they might have a sub-editor. Your story might actually go through 3 or 4 different layers before it gets run. So even though the journalist thinks that you have the most amazing story, it's no guarantee that that story will be run. And it doesn't mean that that it's going to go through the hierarchies of the process. So, there's a journalist, they pick, or there might be even the researcher, then there's the journalist, then there's the editor or the sub-editor, and then there's the final, chief of staff editor that will go through the story and decide what's going to air. In addition to that, it may not work just now, but it might work later, and that's cool. So it might be a story that sits there and gets postponed for a little while, but it might work just that little bit later as well. So that is particularly fine. Sometimes news will happen. So when you go through your story, news will happen. And as we saw yesterday, news broke where the ISIS leader was killed. And that changed the news cycle yesterday. We are talking about, government announcements today with the drought. So the news will happen. And the media schedule is always determined by breaking news. So that evergreen story, that human interest piece that you had may get pushed back or it may not run. So don't be offended if your interview gets cancelled or rescheduled because a more urgent story arrives. That is just the cycle and that is the news. And it's the sort of gamble you take when you're sharing your story with the media. Is you're not hoping that breaking news doesn't happen, but you're hoping that your story fits within the news cycle. Time is of the essence. Be mindful of a journalist's time. They're trying to get stories out. So to assist, make sure you have briefing notes. And if you have any further things that you can follow up with post-interview, make sure that you get out there. timing is everything. When you issue your press release, can make or break that press release. And that's when we're working with the journalist. So that's where I was covering before, about working with the journalist and making sure that you really get your timing right, that you make sure that you are working ahead of time, as well as being reactive in your PR. So that proactiveness in your PR in 2020 will see you have some really good success. The lull and the rush. So just like any industry, so when we're talking about being prepared and working with our timing, we're talking about lull and rush. So news industry, like anything else, a journalist will, their day can shift in a dime. So they'll have the most amazing day and they'll think they have plenty of time, and then breaking news will happen and things will change. Most newsrooms start their day with a fair idea of what will go into the bulletin or the paper, but there's a good chance by the end of the day something will have changed, and that happens. So when we're looking at the lull and the rush of the news cycle, quite often you've got a fair idea of what's happening at the end of the day, but towards the end of the day, more later in the day, the journalist starts to make contact with you on a story. Chances are that's the quicker you need to respond, because they'll be looking for that person. So there's a host of ways that you can maximize your chances of your story being picked up when we start to contact a journalist. And that's why, particularly in Media Connections, we have some timings. We have an 8 a.m., a 10 a.m., a 2 p.m. and a 6 p.m. run, and we've worked that out because of our time working with the media about when to contact journalists. And we know our top particular days are Tuesdays and Thursdays on that site. So there's some ways that you can maximize your chances as you go into this 2020 period and want to work with the media. So while the news can be predicted, there's a few events that are likely throughout the year that are going to elicit rushes, and these are the ones you want to avoid. Elections, state and federal budgets, lead up to Christmas, especially if it's evergreen and not Christmas related. National or international events such as the Commonwealth Games, the Olympic Games, they all change the news cycles, and APEC and those summits. So they change the news cycle, and lots of journalists are actually on site during those areas. Those events will be the spotlight and firmly shine on those particular occasions. So have a look at what's happening in the news. Quiet stints are another one that you want to make sure that you're avoiding, but you're also incredibly responsive with. So I talk about quiet stints between Christmas and New Year. They often see the journalists running on skeleton staff. So this is the time to make sure you've got your prepped press releases, your prep campaigns, all of those sorts of things. So making sure that, those skeleton staff, if they contact you, you're there to respond to them. What they cover will be slightly different. Quite often it's the retail sales, or it's with the Sun Smart stuff. So it's about being reactive in that time, not so much proactive in sending press releases out, but being reactive in those times to the call outs and that you see. During the general shutdown over this time, it also means there's less advertising in newspapers. So there's also less room. So the papers are smaller editions. So we want to make sure that we are over there. Know your time frame and deadline. When you're working with a journalist, know what the time frame is to get things to them before the interview. As we said, magazines can work 3 months up in advance. Newspapers and that tend to be daily. And too often a press release will hit the newsroom just too late. It was a great story, but it's too late and we can't run it. And we don't want to do that. Always give your outlet, time to be able to run the response. So as I said, the news will happen throughout the year. So now I just want to run you through some key takeaways about working with the journalist. So working with the media for 2020 is about looking at the stories and the insights within your business. So some places that you can look for stories within your business are, what do you do every year? What are the key components of events that you run every year? What is the story behind why you do that? So it could be as simple as your team are about to go out and deliver hampers, or they're about to pack and do soup kitchen work for Christmas. Or it could be that you've got a brand new product or service coming around the corner that allows the media to be out there. So I want you to write down, what are we doing and what's the story behind it? And just don't discount any idea at this stage. Just literally write them all down on a whiteboard or wherever you can, because these are going to become the press release ideas throughout the process. I want you to look at key components, key things, key pain points that you see your clients have throughout the year, and see if you can work ahead of time to share tips on how to avoid those with the media, because those tips, those educational based pieces of content are going to really tap into that area. PR will take you time. It is about planning. It is about continually reaching out to the media, using the formula that they're looking for, and doing those sorts of things. make time in your media through your journey throughout the week to make time to work with the media. So that means making time to watch the news, making time to read those Google alerts, making time to share your story out there. When you do write your story, think like a journalist. What is in it for me? Is it new? Is it timely? And does it have some advice? And does it have that human interest angle in there, to make sure that your story is going to be able to get out there? Respond quickly to journalists, and don't let any of this overwhelm you. Continue to share your story with the media on an ongoing basis, because it's about sharing your story consistently, being seen by the media, being seen by a good source. And quite often it will take 7 to 8 times for a journalist to be able to see you, to go, yep, okay, I'm liking what they're doing, I like what they're saying, it's time for me to run the story. I would like to thank you all for joining me today. If anyone's got any questions, I'm going to keep it open for questions for a little bit, and just see if anyone's got any questions from today. I'm hoping those tips help you with working with the media in 2020. For those of you who want to explore Media Connections, you're welcome to. It's mediaconnections.com.au. We are a press release hub that helps you share your story with the media. There's no special offer from me today. It is just a case of this is here, what we're doing. Renee, you're welcome. Renee saying thank you for all the valuable tips. It was so great and helpful to get a story out there. Renee, you've got such big potential with your story on getting your story out to the media. So from my point of view, guys, it's literally an opportunity for you to be able to ask me a few questions now. Next week, we have the webinar coming up with Shalunka on CRMs for your business. And I'm a big systems person. I'm just trying to type in some web links and that sort of stuff here so I can get through to people. So we have Shalunka coming in, and she's going to be able to share with you the opportunities for you to be able to use a CRM and how it can benefit your business. So I'm just going to pop this one through. Darlene, it's been fantastic. Lots of things to think about. I've just pivoted in your business and talking about things differently. Well, that's interesting. So, because that's quite often why did you pivot is a really good time to share your story with the media about what pivoted, what had you change, what had you look at things a little bit differently. Was it lifestyle? Was it family? What particular was it that you were able to get out there? Now, guys, I mentioned a media release template library. If you head to the Media Connections link and head to the resource room, that will head you in the right direction for that one. I've just popped the link into all the chats and live stream options and the webinar that will help you out from there. So Shalunka's joining us next week. Make sure you register for that one. For those of you who don't know, I don't know how you can't. We've got the business the business celebration ball coming up on December 6th at the Victoria Hotel. And this ball is all designed about getting out as business owners and actually getting to have that Christmas party, that celebration that we don't often have when it comes to the world of running our own business or being a solopreneur or a solo business. It's a really good one. It's a really good chance for you to get out there and network with other business owners and get to share. And we've got Kate Carnell, the Small Business Ombudsman, coming along to this one as well. It's a really good opportunity if you get out there. Tickets are just $297, includes 3 courses and drinks for you for the evening. So do come along and join us, and let's celebrate business together. Darlene's throwing out the rule book and talking about visibility. Ooh, that's cool. If you're talking about visibility differently, that's going to have some real angles for small business publications and those sorts of things. So cool to see that. Looking forward to see that. If anyone else has got any questions, I can't see anything else coming through. I'm going to let you guys have a great week, and I will see you around the BBB group, and we'll put the replay up later. But thank you everyone for joining me. Have a great week, and I will see you around soon.